Well, hello folks, Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. Welcome back to the channel. And as you can see, today we're going to talk about Tiamat, the other half, and the pun is completely intended there. We want to talk about Tiamat. Of course, you know, according to Sitchen research, Tiamat was the name of a planet that got broken into two. But I'm wondering if the Sitchen story is only half the story. Thus, we have this Tiamat, the other half. Now, this is a little difficult for me because I'm not a Planet X guy. If you followed me for any length of time, you know that I don't really talk about Planet X. I've never talked about Planet X. And really now I'm only dragged kicking and screaming into talking about Planet X. But I think that I might have something to add. And this just hit me. This just hit me as I was preparing to talk about this. This is Tiamat right here. The goddess Tiamat. And if you look at her, she's got a dragon head, which is very interesting. Dragon claws. So Tiamat is a dragon, and we'll talk about that as time goes on. And that's not a penis, that's a crack in the wall. I blew it up real big. So it is Tiamat. And this, of course, now the Wikipedia says it's Absu, but I don't think that's even a god's name. I think that was wasn't the Absu the earth or the place where they were working. But at any rate, this is clearly to me Marduk with the Mhulu. And he's going after Tiamat to destroy her, as you know, we'll get into. And one thing that I noticed about this, one thing that I thought was really interesting was the construction of what those Mhulus there that he's got in his hands look like. If you can remember what the Ark of the Covenant looks like, it's got a flat surface. And then on either end of it is like an angel facing in towards one another. And you know, I have speculated and asserted in another video, what the heck was it called? It was called the Mhulu, the Lord, Marduk, and Ark of Covenant. I've speculated that the Ark of the Covenant and the Mhulu were the same. Look at these Mhulus. And let me pull up a picture of the Ark. Okay, let's see if we can make this work. And it takes a little bit of imagination. This is just kind of a But you look at this thing here, right? It's kind of holding it in the middle, and it's got, you know, you kind of winged things in the end like that. And, you know, here's another one. He's holding it in the middle. It's got winged things like that. Now, if you take a look at this, which is kind of a little picture of the Ark of the Covenant, right? Boop, 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 middle. So, I mean, if this was skinny, right, and boop, boop, you could kind of see, like, you can see where I'm going with this. There's at least, you know, kind of a, These guys, it was handheld. This, you know, maybe this is the handheld model. This is the base unit. But I mean, you know, and if you look at, you know, take a look at this one, you can see if you're looking down from above, yeah, you know, it kind of, sort of, maybe, in a way. I'll link the video, and you can decide what you think. I think that the Ark of the Covenant and the Mhulu are the same thing. But anyway, that's another video, but it is part of the whole thing. Most of you know the Sitchen lore that watch me, but not all of you, because we do have a lot of people that are new to the whole realm of the paranormal and the whole realm of alternative information. So let's just cover it real quickly. The Sitchen studies really come out of earlier work about the planet Phaeton, and this is coming out of Wikipedia. Phaeton is a hypothetical planet supposedly to have existed between Mars and Jupiter, whose destruction supposedly led to the formation of the asteroid belt. And that's where all the speculation starts to come in. And according to the now discredited Titius Bode law, a planet was believed to exist between Mars and Jupiter. Now it is discredited by, today's scholars, but to say it's absolutely discredited, well, there's been a lot of things that were discredited that all of a sudden aren't discredited when they find out that that which discredited them really didn't discredit them. So, according to the currently discredited Titius Bode or Bode law, a planet was believed to exist between Mars and Jupiter. Now, after discoveries made by the German astronomer Johann Daniel Titius and Johann Elert Bode, they were looking for the search for a fifth planet. When Ceres, the largest of the asteroids in the asteroid belt, was discovered in 1801 by the Italian Giuseppe Piazzi and found to match the predicted position of the fifth planet, many believed it was the missing planet. However, enter Heinrich Wilhelm Matthaus Olbers. He discovered and named another object in the same general orbit as Ceres, the asteroid Pallas. Now, Olbers discovered and proposed that these new discoveries were the fragments of a disrupted planet that had formerly orbited the Sun. He also predicted that more of these would be found, and similar things that consistent with his predictions were found. Can you imagine what that guy looked like if he took that drawing and said, "Oh yeah, that's good, we'll go with that"? And in 1823, Johann Gottlieb Radloff called Olbers' destroyed planet Phaeton, linking it to the Greek myths and legends about Phaeton and others. I wanted to take these out. I forgot to. Now, his ideas were similar to those advocated by Emanuel Velikovsky, and despite Radloff's precedents, Russian authors of the 20th century claimed that the hypothetical planet of Olbers was left nameless for a century and a half, which it wasn't. In 1949, the well-known Soviet astronomer Sergei Vladimirovich Orlov gave the name Phaeton. The name has become established. So, busted up stuff between Mars and Jupiter. There's been speculation about what caused it. So you have these dudes, and then you have some other dudes that come up and say, hey, we've got a new theory. It's called the disruption theory. And this theory says that there was once a big planet between Mars and Jupiter, which was destroyed when it got too close to Jupiter and got torn apart, when it was struck by another large celestial body, when it was destroyed by a hypothetical brown dwarf, a companion star to the Sun, known as Nemesis. And we've all, if you're in this genre, you've heard that. It was shattered by some internal catastrophe. But today, most astronomers have moved away from that, and they think that the asteroids in the belt are remnants of protoplanetary disk. And it's protoplanetary before all the planets. It's just some junk that was left and is prevented by large gravitational perturbations induced by Jupiter. So, yeah. That's all above my pay grade, but I guess these guys are trying to say, no, nothing smashed anything. It's just, you know, some stuff that's been there since before the planets. Okay. And some scientists and non-scientists continue to advocate for the existence of the destruction of a Phaeton-like planet. So they used to think that it was Phaeton or a planet. Then they said, nah, it's stuff that's been there before the planets. But now there's some holdouts that are saying, yeah, you know what, it really is, or there really was, or there might still be a Phaeton-like planet. And chief among these is Zacharias Sitchen. And he suggested that the goddess, and that's what we're going to get into, that the goddess known to the Sumerians as Tiamat was really a planet, and that she was destroyed by a rogue planet that he calls Nibiru, and you're all familiar with that, and that's what created the asteroid belt. And of course his work is largely regarded as pseudoscience. But also astronomer Tom van Flandern has held that there was a Phaeton planet, but that it exploded through some type of an internal mechanism, like a runaway nuclear reaction in uranium in its core, a change of state as the planet cooled down, creating a density phase change, or through continual absorption of heat in the core from gravitons. This is starting to sound like an episode of Star Trek, which is a good thing. So that's kind of the whole thing. There's a bunch of junk between Jupiter and Mars, which is interesting. And the historical view is that there was a planet there that got busted up, either of its own accord or getting smashed by something. And the new thought is that, nah, that junk is there from before all the planets were made, and because of the gravitational weird things that happen, well, then that stuff's just drawn to that place, and now it's stuck there according to the gravitational forces. So let's look at that Tiamat planet theory by Zacharias Sitchen. Now, Sitchen claims that the asteroid belt was once a planet which the Sumerians called Tiamat. And in his books, which I've read, The 12th Planet and the Cosmic Code, Sitchen outlines a celestial battle as described in the Babylonian text Enuma Elish. So what Sitchen is basically saying is that the Sumerians, the Babylonians, they watched in the skies as this battle took place, and they saw it. And the Enuma Elish is, rather than a creation epic, the Enuma Elish is actually a rendition of an extraordinary astronomical event, which puts it in a whole new light, which makes me really less hyped about his beliefs in this regard. I've always appreciated Sitchen's work in the original languages. I've always appreciated Sitchen's work in uncovering, even though there's gaps in his work and some of it's questionable, but he's given us a lot of understanding about some of those original tablets and those original works. He never could get me on board with the 12th planet thing, and I'm kind of still there. But according to him, the goddess in the Enuma Elish isn't really a goddess. It's a planet. And it's split in two by the god Marduk, who we saw chasing her with the Mhulu / Ark of the Covenant. And he used her body to form the heavens and the earth. So according to Sitchen's theory, I mean, here comes the 12th planet, which is Marduk to him. And here comes, you know, the planet that was, I guess, Tiamat, right? Here's Tiamat. And usually they would pass each other, but for some reason, what, you know, Sitchen calls a north wind caused them to come into contact, and it split Tiamat into two. And Sitchen teaches that it is the earth, was one half, and then another break off of it became the moon. And then some other fragments, you know, became the asteroid belt, if I understand his rationale completely. Marduk, which is Nibiru, struck Tiamat, breaking her into two pieces. On the second pass, Marduk itself struck Tiamat, smashing one half of the planet into pieces, yeah, which became the asteroid belt. So it got busted up, and then it got busted up again. The second half being struck again by one of Marduk's moons was pushed into a new orbit, and created what we now know as Earth. And this is said to have happened 4.5 billion years ago. So that's Sitchen's story, and he stuck to it throughout his death. So that's different than the other guy's theories, but it's along the same lines as the Phaeton theory. But of course it's at odds with the, what's that other one called? Their new theory. It's called the, oh, I forget what they called it. Oh, the disruption theory. Okay. Now, proponents believe that there is evidence of this great cataclysm in the solar system today. And this is a picture of what Sitchen says is the orbit of Nibiru. And it comes only every 3,600 years or so. And then here's, you know, all of the other planets. And here's that asteroid belt from all the busted up stuff of Nibiru coming in here and crashing up with Tiamat. So that's all well and good. And that's the, you know, the astronomical, the Sitchian, you know, at least the, depending upon your point of view, either the scientific or the pseudo-scientific view. But what that really is a literalization of a creation epic and of a spiritual story. So, being a guy that endeavors to be spiritual, I said to myself, self, what if we're at least missing half of the story? What if we have been too quick to dismiss the spiritual implications? What if we have been too quick to dismiss the spiritual teachings of the Enuma Elish story? We certainly don't treat the Enuma Elish story with the same respect that we treat the Genesis story. And that, you know, ethnocentrism certainly plays a part in that. But let's look at that. Let's take a second look at the actual mythology, the actual mythos, the actual story of spiritual Tiamat. Now, in the ancient Babylonian or Sumerian religion, Tiamat was a goddess. She was known as the goddess of the sea. Not the chicken of the sea. We're not talking about the best tuna you ever happened to see. We're talking about the goddess of the sea. And ask any tuna you happen to see, what's the best tuna? Okay. No, this is the goddess of the sea. That would have been Charlie if it had been the god of the sea. But anyway, the goddess of the sea, she was depicted as a woman, represents feminine beauty. She was a creator goddess. And she's also considered the monstrous embodiment of primordial chaos. Now, you know, you see those t-shirts, 50%, 51% sweetheart, 49% bitch. That was Tiamat. And I've been out with some girls like that. And there's guys like that too, to be completely fair. But we're talking about the mythos here, or the mythology that's talking about a woman, so don't get mad at me. And this is very interesting to me. She's identified as a sea serpent or a dragon. She's a mama dragon. Huh. Interesting. And in the Enuma Elish, she gives birth to a generation of deities. So, in the Enuma Elish, if we look at it as a spiritual story, the goddess Tiamat, not the planet, the goddess Tiamat, she gives birth to the first generation of deities. And her husband Apsu thinks that the other deities that she created are planning to kill him and usurp his throne. So he decides, I'm going to make war upon them. Keep that in mind. Jealousy, paranoia, sneak attacks. Now, Tiamat also is upset. Remember, she's a reptilian. She's a dragon. So she acts like a dragon. She wars upon her husband's murderers, taking on the form of a massive sea dragon. She gets killed by Marduk, who we saw with the things, right? The Imhulu / Ark of Covenant. But not before. Marduk killed her, but he didn't kill her before she was able to create some monsters of the Mesopotamian pantheon. The first dragons. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Tiamat was mother to dragons. Tiamat was mother to dragons. And their myth says that she created 11 monsters. 4 of them, Basmu, who was the venomous snake, Usumgalu, the great dragon, Mushmahu, the exalted serpent, and Mushhusu, the furious snake, were all reptilian. They were all reptilian. And scholars claim that the principal theme of the epic of the Enuma Elish epic is the elevation of Marduk to command over all the deities. So this leaves us with some very interesting information for some very interesting speculation, which is what we're all about. Interesting speculation, interesting understanding. So Tiamat was a goddess, an earth goddess. She got destroyed, and before she was destroyed, she became mother to some reptilian deities. The Lord just happens to be a reptilian deity. I'm just saying. The Lord happens to be a reptilian deity. Now let's just speculate. If you thought that the Lord was one of these 4, and she did have 4 sons that were reptilian deities, would the Lord be the venomous snake? Maybe. Would he be the Usumgalu, the great dragon? That's a good, or the exalted serpent, Mushmahu, or Mushhusu. You know what? Oh, woo! Bing, 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 bing. Idea. What if these 4 reptilian beings are actually 4 aspects of the one reptilian offspring she had? What if her one reptilian offspring was a venomous snake, a great dragon, an exalted serpent, and a furious snake? And great dragon, why does that ring a bell to me? Oh yeah, the great red dragon of Revelation, and the great dragon that destroyed the earth in Genesis 1:2, as seen by Jeremiah blowing his wrath through his nostrils as fire. The Lord has been seen as a great dragon. The Lord says, worship me, I am the exalted one. So he is claimed to be an exalted serpent. The Lord kills all of his enemies, so he's known as a venomous snake. And he also is a God of wrath, according to his own confession. So he's also a furious snake. So the Lord is very correctly Basmu. Oh boy, I got some more names to call him. Basmu. Usumgalu. Venomous snake, great dragon. Mushmahu. Exalted serpent. I don't think I'd call him that one. And Shusu, furious snake. We won't speculate on who the hairy one, the big weather beast, the mad lion, the scorpion man, the violent storms, the fish man, or the bull man would be, although that's some interesting stuff that we need to look into, because there are some biblical implications of some of those dudes as well. So, this brings up some questions to me. If the Enuma Elish and the book of Genesis are parallel passages of the same thing, if the Anunnaki and the Elohim are the same, as I get a lot of people telling me on my email and in my comment section, believe me. I'm not buying it, by the way. That doesn't mean that that we can't continue to talk. It just means you haven't sold me yet. But you can keep pitching. I haven't shut the door yet, so. But this brings up some questions. Is the Lord really Marduk? You know, he says he's Marduk. He claims he's Marduk. Is he really Marduk? Is Genesis actually Anunnaki, the next generation? And yes, once again, we've worked a Star Trek reference into our show. And if we follow that line, if it is Anunnaki, the next generation, does Genesis detail the next pass of Nibiru? You know, that previous pass, 3,600 years before Genesis, Marduk destroys the earth goddess, Tiamat, throwing the earth that she is and the embodiment of into disruption. And then 3,600 years later they come back, and here's the Lord saying, I'm Marduk. He marched into the meeting in Job 1 as an adversary to the rest of the council, saying, hey, I'm Marduk. I want you guys to worship me just like you did before. And he did have the Imhulu. If he was Marduk, it would explain how he had the Imhulu. And it would explain why he expected to be granted leadership of the expedition again. And it could at least explain why he was so upset when he wasn't granted that leadership. And he did definitely use the Imhulu again. So is the Lord really Marduk? It's a possibility. What do you think? Weigh in. Let me know. Maybe we should do some of these live so we can actually converse one with another. Let me know if you would actually watch live shows. Because I don't, you know, it's more difficult to do a live show because it requires a lot more editing and whatnot. And yeah, just let me know. So is the Lord Marduk? Or is the Lord maybe the son of Tiamat? Here's the great red dragon. He was on the cover of my book, Final Message of the Last Apostle, and it's okay to put Blake's work on there because the copyright's expired. So if you remember, she did give birth to Usamgalu, the great dragon. And here's the great dragon, and in Revelation, the Lord is called a great dragon, a great red dragon. And in Jeremiah, he's called a great dragon. Both Tiamat and the Lord are reptilians. Tiamat did give birth to 4 reptilian sons. Now, if he were the son of Tiamat, it would make sense that his unilateral strike against the Elohim makes more sense because if you view it through the lens of him avenging his mother's death, so these things start to add up a little bit more. So somehow he stole the Mhulu, and if you figure the timeline, he had at least 3,600 years to figure out a way to do that, maybe more. Both reptilians, we were told she gave birth to a great red dragon. In fact, the 4 reptilian sons that she birthed do seem to be personifications of facets of the Lord's personality. We know he did have the Mhulu, and using it as he did unilaterally and really without warning so quickly in a sneak attack that the Elohim were not able to prevent it. Of course, they took it from him afterwards. I guess if it was his mother's death that motivated him, you know, you can kind of sort of empathize with the Lord, and you can empathize without sympathizing. Now, I can empathize with Ted Bundy wanting to be a big shot without sympathize and actually feeling sorry for him. I can understand his point of view. Now, so is the Lord really Marduk? Possibly. That's actually a pretty good thought now that I think about it a little bit more. And it seems that the earth was once again run by, there's a good representation of femininity, because we talk about the earth being a feminine deity. So that's actually making a lot more sense. It could be that the Lord really is Marduk. The Marduk of the Babylonian/Sumerian pantheon, at least. Is the Lord son of Tiamat? And he just using the name Marduk to avenge his mother's death? Or is he simply merely leveraging that earlier myth, or is he simply deluded? I'll tell you what, folks, whatever side of the scale you come down on, it's certainly very, very interesting. And it certainly gives you a lot more to think about. And it certainly helps you to unwind your mind and unindoctrinate yourself.